Our lives on this broken planet are impacted every day by pain, or more poignantly, by our own and others' responses to it. The impacts of people's responses to pain can range from difficult and negative to pleasing and positive. To illustrate, if you've ever enjoyed a national park in the U.S., you have experienced a positive impact of a man's response to profound pain. You see, the national park system really got moving under President Theodore Roosevelt. His passion to preserve beautiful spaces for future generations came as a result of the solace he found in nature when, as a younger man, he was grieving the death of his wife and mother, who both died on the same day, which incidentally was Valentine's Day. A lesser man, or a lesser prepared man, may have succumbed to his grief and perhaps even to cynicism. But in the end, the impact of his response to his trial of a lifetime turned out to be profoundly positive for him and for future generations. Another man's response to a tragic personal loss a half-century earlier also resulted in a profound but very different impact on future generations. Entering college, this man's goal was to become a minister, but higher education slowly eroded away his faith. So a few years later, when his beloved 10-year-old daughter died of a long and painful illness, he abandoned any hope that a loving Creator God could possibly exist. From this point on, he launched with abandon into a naturalistic, material philosophy of origins. Today, most students have studied Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, and his most devout followers would never consider entering into a relationship with their Creator God, a God Darwinism teaches does not exist. Two men, two very different responses to pain and loss, and two vastly different impacts on the world. But what does this have to do with us as we move with our communities into the thaw phase of the COVID pandemic? The point is simply this: we're all in this together. We all live together on this broken planet and all experience not only the impacts of our own responses to suffering, but also those of others. We are all in this together. So how can we serve in this space, helping people process losses they have sustained during the pandemic, whether losses of employment, a way of life, health, or even loved ones? While the physical impacts of the virus will diminish with time, for some its emotional impacts due to isolation and losses may only get more deeply entrenched the longer they are not addressed. So how can we help people around us who are struggling? How can we join God in what He's doing through this pandemic to draw people closer to Himself? There are three very simple but powerful things that we can do to help. And the first of them is we can listen. Listening well is a gift we can give, a gift that shows that we respect and value someone and truly care about them. Amazingly, the simple act of a grieving person telling their story to another person who genuinely cares and is listening can actually start the healing process for them. Here are three simple questions that mental health experts suggest asking a grieving person to get them talking in helpful streams of thought. First, what happened? Secondly, how did you feel or how do you feel? And thirdly, what's the hardest part? And we'll add one do and one don't as well. Do really listen, which isn't easy. And don't fix or correct what they say. That may come later in a follow-up conversation. Secondly, we can help people lament. In a Christian context, most believers are very familiar with lament since 70% of the book of Psalms are psalms of lament. So if the grieving person is a Christian, perhaps read to them a psalm of lament, such as David's lament in Psalm 13. Then invite them to do as he did, to write out their lament, their expression of grief to God. Theologians have identified 7 common elements of laments, although most laments do not contain all of them. And these 7 elements can serve as a guide. First, an address to God. Second, a review of God's faithfulness in the past. 3, a complaint, and this is the one element that is always present in all Psalms of lament. 4, a confession of sin or claim of innocence. 5, a request for help. 6, God's response. And 7, a vow to praise or a statement of trust in God. Many have found great strength and solace in writing out their lament to God. And once written, reading it to someone that they trust is a strong positive step. You may even find this exercise to be a blessing to yourself. Even people of nominal faith who at least believe God exists can be helped by writing a lament to him. You can ask them, if you were sitting right now with God, what would you say to him? And then ask him to write it out. Who knows where this exercise might lead? But what if they have no faith in a God to whom they can address their complaint and request for help? Well, just writing out their lament, expressing their feelings of grief, and then reading it to a trustworthy person can also be a help. So after listen and lament, the third thing we can do is to lead. Grief can be extremely mind-numbing and disorienting. Often people who at other times seem so self-assured and confident, when they are grieving, can be more open to input from others. This is a trust that must not be taken lightly or abused, but should be carefully and prayerfully stewarded. We can lead by praying not just for them, but with them, even if your faith is not, at least at present, theirs. We can lead by sharing that they are not alone in their pain, but that you care, and so does God, who deeply loves them and understands them and is with them in the middle of their pain. And finally, we can lead by sharing with them the most loving, hope-giving message of all, and that is the gospel, that God loved us so much, he sent his only Son, Jesus, to heal this broken planet and the pains of each of its broken people. Sharing this message is the most loving and kind thing we can do for a grieving person. Listen, lament, and lead. 3 simple ways that we can help those in our community leave the winter phase of this pandemic and enter into the hope-filled phase of the thaw.